I want to here offer you now a vision. All right, if you want to grow, if you want to improve, you want to become mentally tough, great, but it's an abstract concept, right? Mental toughness is. You ask every single person in the world what mental health is. Every single person is going to define it differently. You ask a person what mental toughness is. Every single person in the world is going to define it differently. If you ask every single person in the world what's resilience, what does it mean to be resilient, every single person is going to give you a different answer. So we've got to come up with a conclusion for ourselves, right? We need to quantify and define a vision for the kind of life that we actually want to live. For once we've got this vision, this kind of becomes the source of motivation that drives the efforts that will lead us to grow and develop and improve. For it's growth and development and improvement that will lead you into a degree of mental toughness and to develop this inner resilience, this inner strength. All right. So let us see if we can envision the self-disciplined human being that's not going to take offense when a grown-up says something that they don't like. Right. You know what? Every experience in life is just an experience. The good ones, the bad ones, the okay ones, the mediocre ones. Every opinion that we hear is just an opinion, it's an experience. We see some of the emerging generations. I've been in the personal development industry game for quite a few years now, and I will see this level of immaturity in 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds, right? I talk in metaphors. I tell a lot of stories because I understand that human beings relate to stories. If I was just to communicate in facts all of the time, I'd just be opening myself up for debate. So I hate debate. It's only closed-minded people who debate. Debate is where one person is arguing their perspective as if their perspective is the right perspective, and then the other person argues back because they disagree and think that their perspective is also the right perspective. Right? How do people grow and develop and enlarge their perspectives? That's when they take time to understand perspectives that differ from their own. All right, so how open are you to considering ideologies and perspectives that differ from the ones you've already deemed as normal? That is the question. How you answer that question will determine and will actually explain the reason, or one of the reasons, why you are currently in the state that you're currently in life, and how you've generated and why you've generated some of the results that you have done. The openness of your mind, right? Your readiness to embrace new ideas that perhaps might not fit in with your own personal narrative. Right. If we were to envision the self-disciplined human being, there are some people who say some things, and I've really got to bite my lip. There are some ideologies going round in the world today. I could call them ludicrous. I could call them false. I could call them whatever I wanted to call them. But I like to just go with helpful and unhelpful, healthy and unhealthy. Right? There are some ideologies that some people subscribe to and buy into that just don't add any value to neither man nor beast, that just confuse people, that just bewilder people, and is growing up and living life not challenging and confusing enough without having to navigate our way through silly ideologies. When a person is open to experience, it doesn't really matter what situations or circumstances come their way. Challenging situations aren't resisted or denied, but they're just worked through and managed. Right? Sometimes I have people, undermine me, completely insult me. I've had hate campaigns go on social media. I've been undermined. I've been called narcissistic. I was once called a Nazi. It was a recent one. I was called a wife abuser, right? Honestly, one of my training courses like this, a lady in her mid-50s decided through watching me teach like this that I abused my wife. All right? And there's a lot of people out there who do not understand the difference between perception and reality. Some people go through life assuming that, well, I think this is true, therefore it's true. Have you ever enjoyed being judged by someone? But how much do you enjoy judging people? When people judge you inaccurately, that's bad. That makes these people bad people. But when you judge people, you're always right, aren't you? Have you ever noticed this? Right? It's one of these little ironies in life, right? When someone judges you, they're wrong. But when you judge them, you're right. Right, imagine just being open to experience. Imagine when a person says or does something that you might not necessarily agree with. Rather than saying right, wrong, good, bad, and judging, how about saying, that's an interesting experience to have, and regulating your way through the process. This is ultimately what resilience and mental toughness is all about. Not allowing yourself to be emotionally moved by other people's actions, behaviours, throwaway statements, attitudes, communication styles, personalities that simply differ from yours, right? How much more effective do you think you would be in your relational circles, professionally, in the context of your own home, in terms of intimacy with other people, relationships? How much more of an attractive person might you become if you were to cut all judgment and a sumptuous attitude out of your life? Rather than saying, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, you were to instead just simply be open to experience. So, wow, that's different. Wow, that's different. Wow, that's different. To give you an experience, I'll give you an example here, right? I've got my own prejudices. I've got my own biases. I'm aware of this. I am imperfect, just as you are, right? When I left the military back all those years ago came with a certain mindset, all right? Back when I was serving, homosexual people were not allowed in the military, right? That was just it. It was a rule. I didn't make this rule. It existed long before me. Homosexuals were not allowed into the military. That rule changed around about 4 or 5 years after I left. I think it was like 2006 or 2007. So I'm talking quite recently. But listen, it was only around about 15 years ago, or maybe 18 years ago, that homosexuality became legal in some parts of the world. You go across to certain parts of Korea today, you'll get executed for being homosexual. So regardless what your preferences are, regardless what your ideology is, all right, you can get away with your preferences and your ideologies in some parts of the world more easily than what you will in other parts of the world. All right, but could you imagine if every single human being in the world was just open to experience and there was no good or bad? That would mean that you could travel anywhere in the world and not be undermined because of your gender or your race or your skin colour or your sexual orientation or your sexual preferences. In the military, I had it suggested unto me that homosexuals were bad. Right? That was the guys who trained me. I was looking up to men who I admired and respected. I didn't doubt for a second, or I didn't consider for a second, that these men's perspectives might be clouded by their own biases and prejudices. Right? They were like gods to me, big strong men. I wanted to be a big strong man. All right, so I just took every word that they spoke onto me as gospel. It wasn't probably until about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, that I realised how prejudiced and biased I actually was, unintentionally, against homosexual people. Right, I'm being completely honest here. Today I don't have these prejudices. I've worked on them. All right, I've overcome this. Recently, over the last few years, we've seen transgenderism become a big thing. We've seen people now, reject their own genders, become non-binary, all this kind of thing. And again, my biases were rife towards this. Hear me out. Don't judge me for this. I'm being honest. All right, I don't have to be honest here. I'm choosing to be honest. I had a conversation once, around about 4 months ago, with a man who was transitioning to become a woman, Stevie. Right? Stevie has a landscape gardening business. Her and I get on like an absolute house on fire. And as I realised how well I got on with this person, this woman who was previously a man, right, I became so disgusted with the biases and the prejudices that I had before that. All right, when we become open to experience, we cannot help but grow. We grow to understand different people, and rather than judging people and the things that they say and the things that they do as being right or wrong, we grow to understand the reasons why people say and do the things that they do. As we grow to understand other people, we grow to better understand ourselves. It's part of life, right? This is what self-discipline is. It's holding back and not voicing our opinion. Rather than saying what's right and what's wrong from our perspective, we actually withdraw, we hold back, and we ask questions instead and seek to understand, Because no one's a fool, all right? People don't wake up in the morning or get out of bed with the intention of messing their life up or, financially bankrupting their business or messing up their family or anything like this, right? I've got to believe this. You might not, but I have to believe this. I want to believe this. But yeah, some people do, all right? Sometimes we go through life, we make decisions and we make some major mess ups. We really screw up. We make some mistakes, all right? When we make mistakes, when we mess up, of course these things are always unintentional, aren't they? But are we so quick to forgive other people when they mess up? Again, the answer is usually no, all right? When it comes to us being right, we know that we are right quite frequently, especially if we're judging people. When it comes to other people judging us, of course that's bad because other people were wrong when they judge us, which means that we're right all the time and other people who judge us are wrong all the time. And likewise, when we act or behave in a way that perhaps might undermine ourselves or undermine someone else, that's okay because it wasn't intentional. We didn't mean to act or behave in that way. But when other people act or behave in a way that perhaps might undermine us, we don't like that. These people will then deem us being bad because their intentions must have been evil or wicked. So we assume that other people's intentions are wicked and evil and bad, but ours never are. Oh, how hypocritical we are. Hypocrisy is killed through self-discipline, only as we become open to experience and we lose judgmentalism from our attitude. When we begin to live existentially, all right, we become more self-disciplined. Existing in the present moment without being stuck in the past or transfixed in a future outcome. Right, we've kind of touched on this already. Some people become transfixed in the past. Oh, this happened to me. This event hurt my feelings. Therefore, my feelings are still hurt today and I still haven't gotten over this thing. Other people focus in the other direction, look to the future and have fears and apprehensions of what they think might happen, and then fail to appreciate the life that they have and the breath that's in their lungs today. All right? It's the world throughout. It's everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. All right? There are protesting groups right now protesting against the downfall of humanity. Right? People are talking about we're facing extinction. The collapse of the environment. I'm barely old enough to remember the collapse of the ozone layer back in the 80s, early 80s, I think it was. That went on for about 5 years, the ozone layer. And there was protesters because a couple of scientists and experts had looked at the ozone layer and they said the ozone layer was collapsing. And we faced around about 10 years before the ozone layer collapsed and the sun's rays were going to bake the entire human race. Didn't happen. And then there was panic around the millennium, 22 years ago, the millennium bug. Right? The internet was going to, something was going to happen and the world was going to end, and now we're facing another existential crisis and people look forwards and panic and end up completely undermining their lives through the process. And granted, there's a lot of room for improvement in the world, but we can each only do what we can do. The fascinating thing about protesters, if just in case you know any protesters or just in case you are prone to a little bit of protesting, consider this. What do protesters do? Protesters go along and protesters are complainers, aren't they? So protesters see a social or a cultural or a global or a societal problem, and they'll get their banners and they'll go and they'll start chanting and they'll go and make some noise and they'll complain and make a whole lot of complaints that someone else should do something to resolve the problem that they have identified. Not them. They'll just complain and make some noise about it. It's a politician's responsibility. There's only so many politicians. It's society's problem. Society has to change. Just not them. Just not them. But when we live existentially, right, we're living in the here and now. I don't have any time for complaining, right? How you live your life is entirely up to you. If you want to sit around playing computer games for the next 10 years, good for you, right? You're making a decision. I hope it's worth it, right? If you choose to work hard and commit the next 20 years of your life to climbing the corporate ladder at the cost of the time that you could otherwise invest into your wife, into your family, into your kids, good for you. I hope it's worth it. All right. But if you are going to make some decisions, make sure that they're wise decisions that aren't potentially going to cost you at some point in the future. Right? Becoming mentally tough involves us becoming aware of the potential consequences of our actions, our habits and behaviours. Most people are not that aware. Right? And I'm getting in your face right now and I'm sharing a lot of politically incorrect examples, all right, and challenging examples to get you thinking about just how hypocritical you might be, about how your standards might be double standards sometimes. Sometimes perhaps how the rules that you live your life by might not necessarily be the rules that other people live their lives by, and sometimes the expectations of the rules that you think other people should live by aren't always the same rules that you live your life by. What I'm saying here is that it's very, very easy to identify the flaws in society. It's easy to identify the flaws in other people, but it's not always so easy to identify the flaws within ourselves. So if you do want to point out the flaws in society, please just make sure that you have first become perfect and you've already developed a solution for resolving that issue that you want to complain about. Live existentially. Exist in the present moment without being stuck in the past or transfixed on a future outcome. Start today. Commit to the process of being your best and doing your best. Self-awareness. Fully functioning people are aware of themselves and can see the relationship between their attitude, their outlook, their beliefs, and their overall quality of life. I've never known a fulfilled complainer. Right? There's a lot of bitter and twisted and angry people in the world today. We've never seen this before. Turn on social media, look at YouTube, Facebook. I don't spend much time on social media. Reason being is because I hate much of what I see. People's egos and anger and frustration and hatred, and there's wars, and the United States of America is so disjointed now. It's so ununited, and Great Britain is no longer great. It's like bickering, squabbling Britain. It's like disempowered, weak Britain. Everyone in Britain seems, not everyone, that's a big generalisation. So many people in Britain are sitting around waiting for someone or something to come along and take responsibility for solving all of their problems. All right, it's such a disempowered way of living life. Empowered people take responsibility for solving the problems that they identify. To you. Self-awareness. Self-awareness. Fully functioning people are aware of themselves and can see the relationship between their attitude, their outlook, their beliefs, and their overall quality of life. If you are content with where you're at in life right now, great. Your attitude's probably pretty good. Your habits are probably quite healthy. Your outlook in life is probably pretty sensible. But if you are not content, if you are not fulfilled within yourself, if you're not at peace within yourself, it might be useful for you to review yourself, to critique yourself, to analyse yourself, to look at yourself objectively before you focus outward and start trying to nitpick and point out all the flaws and imperfections in other people in society at large. Just saying, you'll find it useful to do this. Other people will certainly take you more seriously. Self-disciplined human beings express themselves creatively within reason. Express themselves creatively within reason. I'm not holding back anything here right now. Believe it or not, right, how I'm communicating right now is how I communicate the majority of the time. Right, don't get me wrong, I can communicate to different people in different ways without compromising my own integrity or my own authenticity. Sometimes if I'm communicating to an older person, I might tone my language down. I might not use certain words or certain tones. If I'm speaking to younger people, I might tone up. All right, I've learned how to connect with different types of people in different ways without compromising my own authenticity and integrity in the process. It's been a learning process, all right? I've become disciplined in my ways when interacting with people. This is a mental toughness masterclass. It's not an emotional IQ workshop. It's not a mental health workshop. We're not here to help you feel better about yourself. We're here to help you grow. We're here to help you grow. It's a different purpose. Hence the reason I communicate in this tone. I want to challenge you. I want to provoke you. So, creative expression is motivated more by freedom or new experiences than safety and or emotional stability. All right? Think about how creatively you express yourself. I'm not just talking about how you dress or how you act and behave and whether you're all flamboyant and stuff. I'm talking about what you actually deliver upon on a day-to-day basis when you show up at work. Are you creative? Are you a problem solver? Are you, committed to the process of solving problems, either your own problems or other people's problems? How valuable are you? Are you contributing to the world or are you just consuming from the world? Do you turn up to work just to get your paycheck or do you turn up to work to add value, to be of benefit to someone? This is kind of creative expression, all right? The world moves forward when people find new ways of solving old problems. All right, that's kind of it. Fulfillment and peace. Now, mental toughness, inner resilience brings with it an air of fulfillment and peace. Now, some people say things to me like, Kane Ramsey, you're a really angry, aggressive man. You're a nasty man. You seem really not at peace within yourself. And to be honest with you, couldn't be further from the truth. Right? I'm at complete peace within myself. Hence the reason I have no problem just expressing myself honestly, authentically, creatively. I'm not putting on a show here. I'm not holding back. There's no airs and graces. I'm not being false. I'm not being superficial. I'm 100% at peace standing before you today, just being myself, just being me. And I know fine well there's going to be a whole lot of people have already taken offence at this and they're going to have left some nasty reviews and some people are going to have called me some names. But you know what? I've experienced worse, right? People have died on me. I've lost loved ones. I've almost died myself twice in the last 3 years, all right? I've built businesses. I've failed miserably. I've lost loved ones. I've lost jobs. I've been broke. I've almost been homeless. I've been unemployed. I've been there. I've done it. It takes a lot to knock me these days. Hence the reason there's no reason for me not just to rock up and be myself and be authentic. What's holding you back? I guarantee you it's just fear. It's just apprehension. It's just cowardice. That's all that it is, right? There's no mental disorder holding you back. You don't have a learning disability or anything like that, even if someone has once in the past said that you do. You know what they called me in school? They called me dyslexic. They told me I had special learning needs, right? What I didn't discover until my late 20s was that I just have quite a unique way of learning. I need to speak things out to make sense of things. So guess what? When I was in school, my teacher's main complaints were, Kane talks too much, right? Back then, when I was in school, when I was a lad, right, learning styles weren't fully understood. I was like, was it Myers-Briggs? I think it was Myers-Briggs learning styles. I'm pretty sure it was. So it's understood now, but back then, the term dyslexia had already been termed as a mental disorder. It had already made its way into the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which therefore means that it must be a mental disorder, just like back then homosexuality was a mental disorder. No, I'm not saying that it was. I'm saying the American Association of Psychiatrists said that it was. And they're professionals, all right? They must have got it right. Until, of course, homosexuality became culturally accepted. And then the DSM had to remove that disorder because it was no longer politically correct for it to be there. Same as dyslexia. It's no longer politically correct for dyslexia to be a mental disorder when psychologists the world throughout understand learning styles, that different people just learn in different ways. You could put 10 children or 10 adults into a classroom and get them all reading a passage and then test them on the passage they've just read. Some might do very, very well, and some might not do very, very well because they need to talk it through to make sense of it. Some people need to have an experience. Some people can just read and remember, but that's not all people because every single human being is different. So it's imperative that we develop the discipline within us to express ourselves creatively and also not be willing to take on board the labels and the terminologies that other narrow-minded professionals and experts or judgmental people are prepared to attempt to assign onto us because they're more interested in judging us than taking time to understand us.